This is the final section of formula basics, and we are going to cover errors and some of the calculation options that we have in Excel. And we'll talk about calculation options at the end of the video, but we'll start with the errors. So we have different types of errors. I have a list here, which is by no means complete, but it will give you the idea on what kind of errors can we face in Excel. And when we understand these errors, we would know that how to resolve these errors, right? So let's jump in with the division by zero error. As the name suggests, in mathematics, we cannot divide any number by zero. So let's take, let's say 12 divided by zero, it will give you this error. So when you see this error and it is coming from a calculation that you have performed, it means that the denominator of the calculation of the division is a zero for some reason, and you might want to fix this error by either doing some manipulation in the calculation or finding out what will happen if the denominator is zero. Hash NA is basically not available. So let's say I have 1, 2, 3 here, and the corresponding values are A, B, C, and I have 2 here, and I'm using VLOOKUP in with this lookup value 2, and I take the value from this table and I get the value from the second column, and it gives me B. But what would happen if the value 4 is entered in this cell which is not available in the table? It will give me not available error. So it means that the value you're looking for is not available in the reference table where you want to find it. Right? Let me remove this. Value error is value error appears when you have an invalid data in a formula. For example, if I want to sum capital A and capital B, it will give me a value error because the value in the formula is incorrect. Reference. So let me show you. Let me go to a different sheet, make it bigger, and let's say I have a formula here which is this equals to A8, and let's say I have some value here, right? If I take this entire column and delete this, it becomes an error. Why? Because when you delete the column, right, Excel wants to shift the formula to a specific uh, cell, right? And since there are no left cell in the sheet anymore, it is giving me a reference error, right? Let me go back and try and explain it a bit more. So let's say I want to include this formula. So let's say I have value 1 here, right, and 1 here, right? And I take the reference of this formula here, and I take the reference of this formula here, right? Let me color code them so that we have better understanding. So the yellow ones are the formula and the white ones are the normal ones, right? So if I take this column and remove this, you would see that this will give me a reference error. What happened here, right? So let's look at this formula. So A9 earlier was B9, correct? So when I remove the column, Excel shifted everything one to the left, right? Since I was taking A8 here and I removed column A altogether, it doesn't know where to shift. Like it wanted to shift to the left, but there was nothing left. So it said there are no references left for me to show. That's why I'm giving you an error that I have no reference left anymore. So that's what reference error means. Name. So if you have an unrecognized function, it will give you this error. How? Let's say sum, and I want to sum t, and remember, if I don't have double quotes, Excel will try and find this t as either a range or a formula or a variable, right? Since there are no variables named t, it will give me value error. So name any unrecognized function. If you want to like enter any function which you think exists but it doesn't, it will give you an error. So let's say data, right? And I put this like this, it will give me a name error. There is no formula named data in this particular sheet or in this particular Excel application. Null. So null happens when you give invalid ranges, right? So let's say sum, and I want to take A1 and B1, right? And I do enter, it will give me a null error. Why? Because A1 and B1 are not separated by comma nor colon, right? So I'm giving a space in between and it doesn't understand what is happening. That's why it's saying null, right? It doesn't understand what is happening. So it is giving you a null error. Okay. Now, numeric error happens when you have an invalid numeric calculations or it is something that Excel cannot calculate normally. So for example, 10 raised to the power, let's say 1000, it is giving you a numeric error, right? So it's a very big and very large number, and if it tries to calculate it, it doesn't know how to show, or there is a restriction on this limit, right? uh, Another example is square root. So a square root of negative numbers is not permitted. So if I do this, it is giving me the same numeric error. And spill is a dynamic type of error. So let's first understand what happens when you use a dynamic or array type of formula. So let's say I have 1, 2, and 3 here, and I say equals to, and I select this entire range and press enter. It will spill out all the values as is, right? So what Excel does is, if you take a range equals to a range, right, it cannot show the entire values in one cell. In earlier version, it will definitely give you an error, or it will show you the first value only, right? But now in the latest versions of Excel, it will show you the entire range. However, it will not show you in one cell. It will spill out from that cell, okay, and it will show you the entire range that you have selected if it is available. What I mean by available is, if the space that is required to showcase all the values is available, it will show the values. And now let's take this cell and I say equals to, and I take this range again and press enter. It will give you a spill error. Why? Because when it tried to spill out of this um, cell, it was not able to, because there is an existing value in one of the cells below it, and it requires 3 cells in order to show the selected range. Circular reference. So this is an interesting formula and you will see why. So let's say I have selected these two cells. I'll just make a boundary so that we understand what is happening. So let's take these two cells, I'll color them, okay, and let's say equals to, in D11 I say E11, right, and in E11 I will say D11 and press enter. Okay, so you will get this error. There are one or more circular references. If I click OK, you will see it will show you these arrows here. And what these arrows mean is that you have at least two cells which point one another, so it doesn't know what value to show. And this is exactly what circular reference is. So it means I'm trying to say that A equals to B, and at the same time B equals to A, right? And in both the variables, no one knows from where the exact value will come from. And this is a circle which will never complete because they keep on going back and forth to get the values, right? That's why it's called circular reference, right? Uh, Now, the last one is actually not an error, but it's a limitation of what value can be shown in a particular cell, right? Uh, in latest Excel versions, this might not happen very often. In some cases, it might happen, but what if you see like a lot of hash or pound symbols in your cell, that that means that your width of the column is not sufficient to showcase whatever data is available. In latest version, that's not the case. So if you look at this, I have insufficient space in column C in order to show the exact entire text, but it doesn't convert it into pound symbols or hash, right? If I go full on, like if I change the width of the column C, I can see the full text, right? In previous versions and in some cases in the current versions also, you will see a lot of these symbols in the column signifying that the data in this cell is not visible only because the width of the column is not sufficient, and that's it. So these were the most specific error examples that I could give. Now you know about these errors, right? And you can use this knowledge in order to tackle situations where you face these kind of errors, and we will look at those in assignments and guided projects.